Erased's ending had me feeling complicated. Yo, what up everybody, Base here, and welcome to the third episode of Basic Impressions. If you like the content we produce here at Otakutariat, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Sharing and getting this video out and you guys responding to us really helps us along the way. Also, if you'd like to help us continue bringing these videos to you, please donate to our Patreon over here. The support really means a lot to us. Finally, make sure to follow us on Twitter and all of our YouTube channels right here on the side. And with that, on to the video.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Erased stars Satoru Fujinuma, a 29-year-old struggling manga artist who works part-time at a pizza shop. Satoru has a special ability called Revival, which allows him to go back in time for short bursts, say around 5 minutes. Usually he does this to prevent some sort of accident or tragedy that's about to occur, and no, this is never elaborated on. After a series of mishaps with Revival, Satoru's mom, the best character, comes to live with him, and then is brutally murdered, with Satoru having been framed as the prime suspect.
Oh no!
The emotional stress of the situation causes Satoru's Revival to overreact and send him back 18 years to his childhood. It is here where Satoru remembers a series of kidnapping and child murders centered around a mysterious classmate named Kaio. Satoru, now in his 11-year-old body, then sets off to prevent the crimes, find the culprit, and save his mom. Now here I'm going to put a big spoiler warning. Being a murder mystery, the enjoyment of this show comes from discovery and linking events between the past and the present. In order to talk about how I felt about Erased, I will have to discuss some elements viewers might want to come across on their own, especially the ending. My non-spoiler recommendation, yes, you should watch it. First off, the production is beyond incredible. The shot composition and editing alone make it some of the best work I've seen. You always get the feeling of things being off. Nothing feels quite right, and then there's a real danger hidden somewhere just outside of view. The editing complements this with quick cuts and highlighting just the right amount of actions and items to keep you from getting comfortable. Also, the change in aspect ratio between the past timeline and the present timeline adds a nice little touch. It really connects you to that idea of viewing the past through a thematic lens, and it works very well. You'll feel your own sense of nostalgia. You start to think about what you'd do if you were in this situation, if you were suddenly put back in your childhood body. What friends and moments have you forgotten? What things did you miss because you were just focused on what only was immediately in front of you? Erased nails this excellently and blends perfectly timed music, God, the OP is so good, and some genuine comedic levity. The dub is also one of the best I've ever heard. There are some scenes that are executed too well for their own good, with the voice actors emoting just in unbelievably realistic ways. Except you, Kenya. Erica Mendez is too recognizable. You think I don't know that's Ryoko Matoi under there? You fool! You imbecile! You absolute simpleton! She does an incredible job. The character just doesn't sound 11. Also, shout out to Sachiko for probably being the best anime mom ever. God, what is it with dark-haired, thick-lipped women recently? Is this a trend? Anyways, at the end of the journey, things get resolved. Yeah, I know that sounded vague as hell, but listen. The ending to me was muddy, and I'm really going to spoilers now. I think the journey is worth your time, and you should form your own opinions on the ending. It's like my video has its own mystery. God, that was really bad. I'm so sorry. Moving on in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so first off, there's two ways I'm gonna discuss Erased. What it is, and what I think it could be. I think it's important to separate these for critique, as I don't want to insert my own biases and assumptions into what the show is trying to accomplish. So, part 1, what it is. So starting off, I separated Erased roughly into 3 acts. The first Revival act, which combines plot setup and initial problem solving by Satoru. The second Revival act, which occurs after Satoru fails in the past to stop the murders and goes back in time again. And the post-coma act, after which Satoru ends up creating a new timeline after the murderer had tried to kill him in the past. Looking on screen, you can probably see where my first problems with the endings comes in. It's too short. With only 2 episodes to resolve the conflict, a lot of the characters' actions in the post-coma act feel extremely rushed and come off a little more contrived. But we'll get to that later. Let's go back and discuss the first act. This is the real bread and butter of the series. Seeing Satoru reconnect with his childhood friends and refamiliarize himself with his surroundings puts the warm nostalgia back into the viewer. His interactions with the boys bring some of the most natural feeling childhood relationships I've seen in media. And once Satoru starts noticing the circumstances that lead to the isolation and death of classmate Kaio, the first victim, our plot really gets set in gear. The abuse Kaio is suffering under is handled delicately and expertly, never used just for shock value. While her mother is probably too obvious of a red herring to be the killer for first-time viewers, there's no doubt that the first goal is to get Kaio out of the house and into a place where she can be safe. Her standoffish shell is completely understandable, and once Satoru starts breaking through, it's downright beautiful. The beginning awkwardness blooming into a strong emotional bond keeps you invested moment to moment, and every time Kaio realizes that people are out there just to care for her, you just want to be happy for her. Satoru manages to keep Kaio with him and his friends on the day she was supposed to die, and everything looks promising. Which is why when Satoru fails to actually save her, it's a punch in the gut. All that effort for seemingly nothing. The second revival act keeps you on the loop asking more questions. Can you actually change the past? What details did we, viewers and Satoru, miss out on? Who is the killer? With Satoru back in the present, he gathers a few more details while on the run from the police, still looking for him for his mom's murder. When he's caught, he's flung back again to 1988, this time armed with new information and a new resolve. Instead of being as passive and single-minded in his pursuit, Satoru starts to engage more people in the community. His mom, his teacher Yashiro, his other friends, in helping them form a protective circle, and using his future knowledge of events, he carefully comes up with ways to stop not just Kaio's death, but 2 other children as well. This new active and aggressive Satoru is an excellent development for the passive man we saw in the beginning. However, this is where things become a bit mixed. Episodes start to blend together, and while Satoru is still out trying to solve the problems going on, with 2 extra kids to protect, you don't get the same focus on them that you got with Kaio. There are less reveals and more close calls instead of the primary mystery being solved. It's a lot more about protecting people and kind of more action-based. Kaio is still there, and there is a bit of development in her home situation, including an incredible final conversation between the 2 mothers. But you feel more like you're along for the ride rather than an active participant. Which might be the point? The adults taking a more active role really endears you to them in a way that they have more power than the kids do. The homeroom teacher, for example, Yashiro, steps up in the second act much more, forming a good pair with Sachiko, that's the mom by the way, as a duo to help Kaio's situation, and giving Satoru the confidence that he really is affecting change. So when Yashiro turns out to be the killer, it's another blow to Satoru, and now he's trapped, left sinking in a frozen car. Until he wakes up 15 years later, coming out of a coma for the last 2 episodes. Okay, so I'm just gonna try to articulate how this ends and how I interpret it. If you have any other opinions, please leave them in the comments below. So Satoru was rescued. We don't really know how, but I don't have a problem with it. It's a nitpick at best. And his memory is fractured. His mother has been taking care of him for 15 years. Again, best mom ever, has allowed him to be sustained and not wither away. Slowly upon reuniting with his friends, everyone has been saved and is doing well, but the killer is still out there. There's a lot of setup of Satoru trying to put his memory from the previous 2 timelines back together, and a final confrontation with Yashiro and implicate him. However, Yashiro is also here, having played the caring teacher watching over him. The only thing Yashiro wondering is how Satoru knew his moves before he made him. This obsession that Yashiro has forces a confrontation between the 2. But then things get weird here. Turns out Satoru never lost his memories and was just playing it off in order not to worry people who seem to have moved on. Except these people, particularly Kenya, Hiromi, and Sachiko, know that Satoru has been going on trying to prevent these murders, or at least have known he's been doing a lot of behind the scenes work. It's heavily implied. So when he was put into a coma, they know that he was with the murderer. Sachiko even states that she didn't want to overload Satoru if he truly forgot his memory. So there's this strange double wall of people not talking to each other, which again may be the point. There's a slight theme of individual superheroism versus collective heroism in some of the episodes, where Satoru grows from being a lone ranger fighting by himself, having a group that he can trust. But now he's reverting back to that lone ranger archetype in the 3rd act climax, which I can see as a sort of, the 3rd act conflict, and that's how stories are written. But then that's not even true, because then you cut to the confrontation between Satoru and Yashiro, and actually Satoru has mobilized the friends he has to do a big brain gambit to get Yashiro to try and kill him in the open after trying to kill himself. because Satoru gets in his head and spits some revelations about how Yashiro needs Satoru. Are you lost? Cause I am. And in the end, everything turns out good? The mystery is solved and everyone's alive, so there are no loose threads. The show's over. Everything's wrapped up neatly. But see, this is my problem. I don't feel like anything was actually solved. It was more, oh, Yashiro told Satoru he was the killer, tried to kill him, failed. So 15 years later, after they also mentioned the statute of limitations were up anyways, they catch him trying to kill Satoru again? Sort of? He says he hasn't killed anyone since putting Satoru on ice, so why does he care? If his desire was so insatiable, shouldn't he have committed other murderous acts? Even if he was obsessed with figuring out Satoru's secret, why does he have to set out this guilt-tripping other gambit where Satoru will commit suicide if he doesn't tell him? Yes, this is separate from Satoru trying to kill himself, and that gambit, stay with me, it's not that important. I think the main issue as a viewer is you don't know who knows what, and with only 2 episodes, you really don't have time to explore the deep many layers of what's going on. But it does end. Everything's resolved. In the end, I think my feelings on the show can be described on a curve like this. At the beginning, you're with Satoru in his journey, feeling like an equal partner as you and him both try to figure out the mystery. However, over time, you are pushed more and more into becoming a more passive viewer as Satoru becomes more active himself. And in the end, you're completely disconnected from the resolution. It just makes you feel incomplete. And while the quality of the show doesn't suffer, it heavily colored my enjoyment. It makes me think of what it could have been. Part 2, what I think it could be. Let me start out by saying I'm not a writer. I don't want this to come across as me rewriting Erased in a superior way. Also, this is purely based on watching the 12-episode anime. I have not read the manga, so maybe the ideas I have are addressed in the original medium. This is more of a response to where I felt the show could have gone. If you've watched Erased, you probably noticed in this video I skipped over some pretty prominent characters and emotional moments. Well, they never felt relevant. Let's start with Jun, aka Yuki. From the beginning, we're told that he was the man wrongly convicted for the kidnappings and murders, and the framing of the show supports that. Yuki is clearly socially awkward and, to me, displaying characteristics of autism or some other type of neurodivergence. Him being as close to Satoru and Kaio makes him an even brighter red herring than Kaio's mom. He's so perfect of a scapegoat and portrayed so genuinely innocent that we know he didn't commit the murders. Or did he? Is he so obvious that us as viewers are already ruling him out due to our perceived notions of a calculated killer? Is the obvious answer actually the correct answer? No, it's not. The show never really does commit to Yuki. He's there, he's around, but he's never really involved with the gang, not even as a supporting character. He's an innocent victim that Satoru gets to save from his imprisonment, which in itself is a net positive, but I feel more could be done. Cast more legitimate doubt on Yuki. We hear about how people in the town are easy to pin the blame on him, but actually show Satoru and the gang themselves starting to doubt this innocent man. You can even have it where Yashiro is manipulating events to put more blame on Yuki, and where even we're convinced he did this. Maybe even a situation where Yuki himself thinks he is to blame and is frantically trying to cover his tracks, which leads to even more doubt. I'm sure there's a way this could work and you could write it and it would all fit. Even if you don't want to do that, more scenes of Yuki's places in town could have been a better commentary on how neurodivergence is looked upon by our larger community. Having the viewers see how the town treats and belittles this man for always hanging around children, but no one actually reaching out to help him, is a powerful mirror to our own lives. How we typically leave those who don't fit behind and punish them for the first signs of trouble. Yuki was greatly underutilized, and I feel that there is much more that could be explored with this character that we never see. Another thread that came up during the show was the brief and sudden development of Kaio's mom in the big confrontation scene with CPS, Sachiko, and Yashiro. We learned that Kaio's mom had suffered abuse herself from her now divorced husband. There are some scenes that I took as implications that Kaio's mom sees her abuser in Kaio and thus takes out her frustration and abuse on her. Just want to say that I am in no way defending her actions at all, just pointing it out. But with this, there could be a stretched out dive into how the cycle of abuse perpetuates down through generations. How victims without support can, not always, but can go on to abuse others. Kaio's grandmother lays this on by blaming herself for not helping. Again, holding up the mirror to our own world, showing how community repeatedly fails to protect anyone, and how this failure has caused an ugly rot to grow and fester to hurt more people. Instead of having it all at once, we see a more complex view of Kaio's mom, that even though we still abhor her for her actions, we see that they did not spring up spontaneously. Hiromi and Aya, the second and third victims, also never really get any development. I don't have much thoughts on what to really specifically change with them, but just more exploration of who they are could make us grow more attached to them and drive our motivation to figuring out the killer. They just feel horribly balanced next to Kaio. Kaio could still be the focal point, but maybe not as much after she's saved and is out of town. Then there's the classmate Hisato, who, not being an original victim, gets targeted by Yashiro after Satoru goes and protects Hiromi and Aya. There was an undercurrent that Satoru being so focused on Kaio that he turned the class against Hisato, which leads to her self-isolating and thus making her a target. Satoru kind of figures this out, but it's more that it's told to him, and he tries to fix it, leading to his eventual coma. There could have been a story about how we shouldn't damn others trying to save someone else, or how dangerous it is to be blinded by what's right in front of you. Again, the pieces are there, there just should have been more time devoted to it. Finally, there's Airi! Yeah, I got nothing for her. She doesn't really impact the main mystery plot so much. She's just someone who helps Satoru in the present get more information for when he goes back in time the second time. I mean, she's cool. I just don't even know how it would expand her role. Honestly, she could have been taken out. Also, the ending where they meet in the new timeline. Boo! I mean, it's cute and fun, and it's just a good ending. It's fine. But boo! I know what you're thinking. Base, that's a lot of things to add to a 12-episode anime. Well, this is where I come in with my idea of the erased in my head. Again, I'm not a writer, but let me spitball my ideas to y'all. First, let's double the number of episodes and round it off at 25. This gives us way more time for exploration. Next, we need to think about the themes of what I want to get across, which are nostalgia and the perversion of it, and community connection / perspective. These are going to be our running threads throughout the show. The setup stays mostly the same. Satoru goes back in time after learning the date of Kaio's murder. Once back in time, we follow Satoru in his first attempt to save Kaio. Once he does, say a week later, he's transported back to the present, where everything seems to be right, except it's not. Kaio's still dead, and the other murders still happen. In fact, Satoru's changes may have made things worse for some other characters. Maybe more kids were killed. Working alone, he had incomplete information, and thus didn't actually see the consequences that he brought on the timeline. This sets up our loop that we will run with throughout the series. In my version, Satoru isn't going back just 2 times. No, I envision him going back several times to the same starting point, attempting to fix the mistakes he made with incomplete information. Learning slowly that the town and the people he felt were so familiar were actually hiding deep, dark secrets kept hidden in the shadows. This is where that perversion idea comes in, and now with the mind of an adult, Satoru can more clearly see what's out of place and what's going on in the background. With each trip back to the past, we can have Satoru explore and connect with a different person in small mini arcs. 3 episodes for Yuki here, 2 for Hiromi, 3 for Yashiro. Hey, even some for Kaio's mom. This way, as Satoru progresses, he learns more and more about how to connect with people and get their perspective on the situation, slowly forming a complete picture of the town and having more knowledge of what his actions will cause people to do, becoming more confident in his abilities, and linking to the theme of community perspective and community connections. With each failure comes a new chance at redemption, and his perseverance ultimately leading him to succeed. Thus, the Satoru we see at the beginning, alone, isolated, putting on a fake face, is eroded away, and we see the fully developed man who learns what it means to be part of a community and form genuine relationships with all different sorts of people. The community in turn is able to stand united against the killer, rooting him out in the end, with Satoru being the linchpin linking them all. Now, there are some obvious details that need to be hashed out, such as the mechanism for Satoru going back so many times. The time travel isn't really explained in the show, and it's not that important, but if I'm going to have him fly back several times, I think some sort of trigger is necessary. There's also the issue of writing out how the actions in Satoru's past logically affect the present. Finally, coming up with a satisfactory ending that's believable is not easy. It would take a very talented writer to take this skeleton and turn it into an amazing product, even one with the editing productions of the original show. I personally just will always think of the erased in my head whenever I think about this show, and how we could have had an anime evoking the same feelings I had when playing Persona 4. Hey! How'd you get there? The small, sleepy town where nothing happens, hiding a real, tangible danger that can only be stopped by a combined community effort. I think it would have been really special. Erase is still very good. The visual design and production alone make it worth viewing, and in those character moments there's a genuine sense of camaraderie and friendship that I haven't seen in media in a while. While the ending left me wanting for more closure as a viewer, it still ended in a way that I wasn't thrown off by. Like I said in the beginning, it muddied my view of the show, but it didn't ruin it. I think another big positive of the show is that if you have a friend who thinks anime is nothing but theme struggles, fan service, and weird humor, show them Erased. You might just change their perspective. And with that, I'll see you all next time.